All right, ladies and gentlemen, as the staff switches in to take the position to give the staff presentation, I know many of you, this may be your first time at City Council. What will happen now, and I'm assuming the majority of you are here for this item, what will happen now is the staff will make their presentation. We'll have any comments from our IBA or our city attorney. Then we'll turn it over to the public to speak, and then the council will speak, ask questions, and then take their vote. It's my job to try and get us through that as efficiently as possible because you're ultimately looking for a decision today, and we're aiming to give you one. What I'd say is in terms of your part, when it comes to your time, we have 2 seats that are reserved here in the front row. They both have yellow signs on them. When the city clerk calls your name, I'd ask you to come forward and be prepared. Sit in one of those seats so we can cycle through the speakers as quickly as possible. I think most of you have been informed by my staff that because of the large number of speakers, we'll be limiting people to 1 minute per speaker. You can combine time if someone's willing to yield you time, but we'll be limiting to 1 minute per speaker. What we will do is do 30 minutes in support, 30 minutes in opposition, 30 minutes in support, 30 minutes in opposition until we've heard from every member of the public who wishes to speak. And then at which point we'll turn it over to the council. So think about what you want to speak now. I hope that you would speak to the nature of the ordinance, which is a land use ordinance. We are not debating whether or not marijuana is right for medicinal purposes, positive or negatively. I think it's often safe to say that the council believes that. That's why it's on the agenda. The question is simply, where does it go? And your input in knowing where would be appropriate locations for it will help the council in its deliberations, and again, hopefully to get to a result that at least the majority of folks can be comfortable with. So with those introductory comments, Mr. Norman, it's always great to have you here at council. How much time do you need for your presentation?
7 minutes max.
7 minutes. I'm glad to see that you're joined by our Director of Development Services, Mr. Vaki. Sir, good to see you as well. Mr. Norman, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you. In 2009, the council established the Medical Marijuana Task Force. In March 2011, the council adopted an ordinance allowing cooperatives in a limited number of zones throughout the city. In September 2011, the City Council repealed the ordinance in the Land Development Code after a petition was circulated, deemed complete, and qualified for submittal to the voters. In April 2013, staff presented a new draft ordinance to the council as a discussion item. The council rejected the new proposal and directed staff to return with modifications to the 2011 Land Development Code ordinance. The council directed and staff has modified the ordinance to clarify which PDO zones could permit cooperatives, increase the buffer from sensitive uses in between cooperatives to 1,000 feet, include a 100-foot buffer from residential zones, add residential care facilities to the list of sensitive uses, and prohibit use of patient-operated vending machines. The ordinance requires a Process 3 conditional use permit with a 5-year expiration date. It provides new definitions for minor-oriented facilities and playgrounds, and allows for application of a conditional use permit in commercial zones that prohibit residential uses other than a watchkeeper, in the IL31 and IS11 industrial zones, and in the PDO zones with the same characteristics as the commercial and industrial zones. Cooperatives are required to be 1,000 feet from other cooperatives, minor-oriented facilities, child care centers, playgrounds, libraries, residential care facilities, churches, public parks, and schools, and 100 feet from residential zones. The ordinance prohibits on-site medical consultation, lighting and signage are regulated, security systems and the California State Licensed Security Guard are required, and emergency contact information is required to be posted. Cooperatives are permitted to operate 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Patient-operated vending machines are prohibited, and if a CUP is approved, the cooperative is then required to obtain a public safety permit prior to opening. 2 permits are required to open a cooperative. A conditional use permit processed through DSD. The cost of the CUP is an $875 fee, and a billable account with an initial deposit of $8,000 with additional funds as needed. After approval of a CUP, the applicant is required to apply for an annual public safety permit through Development Services. San Diego PD will assist Development Services by conducting fingerprinting and background checks. Based on an initial assessment, the cost of the public safety permit will be approximately $3,200 for the first year and slightly less for subsequent years. However, this does not include the cost for an annual audit, which is still being determined. Additional costs will be associated with any tenant improvements the cooperative would make. Neighborhood Code will continue to enforce the regulations with assistance from San Diego PD in approximately 1/3 of the cases. Sandeg's mapping and data services were engaged to provide a map showing where cooperatives could potentially locate. calculate the amount of land zoned to allow cooperatives, and identify the maximum potential number of cooperatives. These maps represent the 2011 and 2013 ordinances. The zones where cooperatives could locate are identical in each map. The difference is the amount of buffer area created by the increase in the separation distances from 600 feet to 1,000 feet. Commercial zones that could permit cooperatives are in shades of red, industrial zones, shades of blue, PDO zones, in shades of orange. The darker shades are where the cooperatives could apply for permits. Lighter shades represent areas that are precluded from a cooperative due to proximity to sensitive receptors or residential zones. The assumptions used to determine the maximum potential number of cooperatives are: each cooperative is optimally located within the zone. Every potential site within the zone is vacant. Every location is developed with an appropriately sized space. Every location has a property owner willing to lease to a cooperative, and it assumes 100% of the sensitive uses have been accounted for in the analysis. This table identifies the maximum potential number of cooperatives that could locate under the 2011 and 2013 ordinances using those assumptions. Under the maximum potential scenario, the 2013 ordinance would allow for 131 cooperatives to open. However, when considering the assumptions, it's clear the actual number is significantly less. Two clear examples of this are found in Council Districts 8 and 6. The largest number of potential cooperatives, 54, occurs in Council District 8. There are two reasons that 54 cooperatives could not open. First, there's a large area in Old Mesa where cooperatives could be permitted with a CUP, but most properties are unsuitable because they're developed with large industrial structures or are undeveloped land. Second, and more significant, is that the Otay Mesa Community Plan update will repeal the Otay Mesa PDO and replace it with citywide zoning. As a result, the area in orange where cooperatives could be permitted currently will be reduced to only the areas outlined in red. This rezone will significantly reduce the potential number of cooperatives in District 8. A similar situation occurs in Council District 6 with 28 potential cooperatives. The portion of Kearny Mesa that could permit cooperatives is industrial zoned. However, approximately 1/2 of the area is unsuitable since it is vacant and located on Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. Also, many of the properties remaining industrial would not be suitable due to the large industrial structures. Most areas of the city have some constraints that would further limit the actual number of cooperatives. Lastly, this table provides a breakdown breakdown by council district of the allowable acres where cooperatives could potentially locate within the zone, and the prohibited acres where cooperatives could not locate based on proximity to sensitive uses and residential zones. There are slightly more than 11,000 acres of land zoned to permit a cooperative with a conditional use permit. However, 20% of that area, approximately 3,000 acres, would be precluded due to the amount of sensitive uses and residential zones. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Right on time, Mr. Norman. Thank you very much, sir.